On the afternoon of April 4th, 1943, operations at Soluch airfield in Libya followed the normal rhythm of the war. The 376th Bomb Group prepared for another night raid on Naples, part of Operation Climax, a continued effort to cripple Axis supply lines in the central Mediterranean. Maintenance crews fueled aircraft, checked hydraulics, and loaded bombs beneath the hot African sun. Among the planes scheduled to take off was a brand new consolidated B-24 Liberator assigned to the 514th Squadron. Its name was painted neatly on the nose, Lady Be Good. She was on her first combat operation. The briefing that evening emphasized weather and timing. A late-day sandstorm had reduced visibility to a few miles. Conditions over Italy were expected to be marginal. Pilots were instructed to maintain radio silence and return using dead reckoning navigation once bombs were dropped. For the crews, it seemed routine. Each man had rehearsed the route dozens of times on maps spread across canvas tables. At 7:50 p.m., engines began to start. The desert vibrated with the sound of multiple four-engine bombers spooling to life. Lady Be Good was one of the last to roll. As darkness fell, she lifted from the runway and turned north across the Gulf of Sidra. Witnesses on the ground saw her navigation lights disappear into sand-filled haze. No one could have guessed that this would be the last confirmed sighting for more than a decade. Over the Mediterranean, strong headwinds pushed the formation apart. Some aircraft returned early, others continued independently toward Naples. Lady Be Good maintained course, guided only by her navigator's estimates and the dim horizon ahead. She carried 9 men, enough fuel for roughly 11 hours of flight, and the quiet expectation that she would be back before sunrise. Crossing the Mediterranean at night was never easy. Cloud layers often obscured the moon. Drift errors could exceed dozens of miles. Despite the turbulence, the Liberators reached southern Italy shortly before midnight. Heavy flak blanketed the coastal approaches to Naples, yet the city itself remained hidden beneath overcast skies. The bombardiers relied on stopwatch calculations to release their payloads. According to post-mission analysis, Lady Be Good likely dropped her bombs on open water, mistaking cloud reflections for the target area. Turning south for the return leg, the crew faced worsening visibility. Radio navigation aids from Benghazi failed to register. Without radar or ground reference, they relied on the compass and airspeed calculations. Unknown to them, a persistent headwind pushed the bomber far south of its intended path. Instead of approaching the Libyan coast, Lady Be Good flew deep into the Sahara. The crew expected to see coastline lights marking the airfield. None appeared. Fuel gauges dropped toward reserve levels. Lieutenant Hatton ordered flares fired through the darkness. No response came. Believing they had overshot the base and were now over the sea, the crew prepared to abandon the aircraft. Shortly after 2 a.m, they parachuted from roughly 2,000 feet. All 9 men survived the jump, landing separately across open desert. The aircraft continued on, engines windmilling, until fuel starvation caused it to descend. At approximately 16 miles inland, it touched down almost level, sliding half a mile before stopping intact. Propellers bent slightly, fuselage unbroken. The automatic pilot had held a steady trim even after the crew left. At dawn, the Lady Be Good rested in silence, perfectly preserved under the rising sun. Morning light revealed nothing but sand in every direction. The crew regrouped gradually, guided by parachutes spotted on distant dunes. Their location was unknown, their radio lost with the aircraft. They carried one canteen of water and minimal rations, standard survival gear assumed unnecessary for a sea bailout. The nearest habitation lay hundreds of miles north across uncharted terrain. Believing they were near the coast, the men decided to walk north. Desert navigation is deceptive. With no landmarks, every dune appears identical. Temperatures climbed above 100 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-morning. Sand reflected sunlight like water, and mirages shimmered along the horizon. The first day's march covered roughly 20 miles. Spirits remained high. They expected rescue aircraft by evening. None came. At Solush, officers assumed Lady Be Good had gone down at sea. Search operations concentrated northward over the Mediterranean. No one considered the possibility that the crew had flown inland. On the second day, the men rationed water to a spoonful each. They rested beneath parachute silk for shade and set off again after sunset when temperatures dropped. Cold replaced heat. The desert swings violently between extremes. They used a pocket compass to maintain direction by starlight, always north. Over the following days, exhaustion and dehydration eroded their strength. Some fell behind, others pressed forward, determined to find the sea. They left notes scratched on canteens and signal cloths. Their progress formed a straight line visible decades later to recovery teams, a trail of endurance across emptiness. Later examination of recovered diaries reconstructed their journey almost day by day. Entries described blistering heat, cracked lips, and relentless sandstorms. They marched by night to conserve strength, following the compass north and resting in daylight. On the fourth day, they believed they saw mountains, likely the distant sand ridges of Kalanskio. Hopes rose briefly, then faded when no coastline appeared. The group's determination impressed investigators years later. Even as physical capacity failed, discipline remained. They organized short shifts of movement and rest, recorded bearings, and attempted to estimate distance covered. Water ran out on the third day. After that, they relied on moisture squeezed from ration tins. Temperatures during daylight exceeded 110 degrees, while nights fell below freezing. Wind scoured exposed skin raw, yet their direction never wavered. Evidence shows that by the fifth day, several men collapsed from heat exhaustion. Others continued, traveling at least 110 miles from the aircraft site. The final diary entries dated to April 10th spoke of faith and exhaustion, ending mid-sentence. When recovery teams found the remains in 1959, they lay in small clusters, positioned as if sleeping. Personal effects were undisturbed. Watches, dog tags, and notebooks preserved by the arid climate. To historians and aircrew veterans alike, their march represented the ultimate test of training and resolve. Cut off from command, unaware of their true location, they maintained order and purpose until the end. It remains one of the most remarkable survival efforts recorded in the North African theater. 16 years passed. The war ended, airfields closed, and memories faded. Then, in March 1959, a British petroleum exploration crew conducting aerial surveys over southern Libya noticed metallic reflections on the desert floor. They reported coordinates of what appeared to be an aircraft in exceptional condition. An investigation by the United States Air Force confirmed the impossible. The wreckage of Lady Be Good, missing since 1943. Photographs showed the bomber upright, nose slightly buried, windows intact. Inside were logbooks, thermoses, and machine guns still loaded. There was no evidence of fire or impact trauma. Instruments were frozen in flight configuration. The desert's dryness had preserved everything, as though frozen in time. Search parties extended north along the probable line of march, and gradually located human remains between 60 and 100 miles from the site. Identification tags confirmed the crew of Lady Be Good. Diaries and maps recovered from the sand provided the first full account of what had happened. The findings corrected long-held assumptions about navigation and wind drift in desert operations, leading to improved training for future missions. Portions of the aircraft were later transported to air bases and museums in the United States for study and memorial display. Other fragments remain in Libya, partly reclaimed by sand. The site became a symbol among aviators, a silent monument to perseverance under impossible conditions. Today, Lady Be Good is remembered not for combat success, but for the story her crew left behind. Their ordeal stands as a case study in navigation error, human endurance, and the unforgiving nature of the Sahara. Every pilot who flies long over featureless terrain understands their legacy. Training can prepare a crew for war, but only discipline and faith sustain them when the map runs out.